A bevel is when you have a hard edge and you shave it down just a little bit to add a rounded effect. Your countertop in your kitchen might very well be beveled. Let me go ahead and give you an example. I'll grab a rectangle and let's make believe this is your counter. Alright, so I'm going to draw another rectangle here, and your sink and your faucet are over here somewhere, and this is the edge of your counter. This is an unbeveled edge. I'll go ahead and get rid of this one, and I will grab the rounded rectangle, and this is what a bevel looks like. Okay, it's nice and round. We can apply the bevel effect to a 3D object. So I'm going to create a rectangle, and I'll give it a fill of, let's see, something that we can see, green, and I'm going to turn the stroke off. I'll go to Effect, 3D, Extrude and Bevel, and I'm going to put Preview on, and I'm going to choose Bevel here. As you can see, by default, it's set to None. And there are quite a few different bevels in here. Some will take longer to render than others. As you can see, we have something called Classic. And when you look at a bevel, you look at this shape here. This is called a profile. And it's going to give you a preview as to what the bevel is going to look like on the edges. Let's go ahead and choose Classic. I'll click OK. And I'm going to zoom in so we can see what we get here. Notice the edges now have a more of a 3D effect. Bevels are really helpful when you're trying to show light striking a surface. Before, let me go ahead and undo that bevel. I'm going to show you what it looks like without a bevel at all. Okay, we'll preview it. And as you can see, it's pretty flat. If you add a bevel, all of a sudden you give the object more interest. So when you're creating things like furniture or boxes, to really sell that it's 3D, always try to add a bevel when you can. Now we can go ahead and try a little bit more of a complex bevel, and I'll click OK, and you'll see the difference we have here. So once again, the bevel will render or resolve itself based on the complexity of your object. Now what I'm going to do is show you something really cool. How to create something like a vase or a vase, depending on whether you're from Jersey or not, which I'm from, and you're going to use a regular old path. So what I'm going to do is let me grab my ruler, I'll press Command or Control R, and I'm going to draw out a guide just to help me to keep this object in this line here. So I'm going to create 1/2 of a vase. Alright, so I'm going to just go ahead and do something like this. Just a profile. Alright. I'll hit the Shift key and come over here, and I'll grab my direct selection tool. I was trying to get a straight line here, but I'll just manually move that down, and I'll move this out like so. Whenever you create a profile like this, you have to kind of see your object in your mind's eye as if though you cut it in half. And I'm just modifying this shape because I thought that the object would have a point up here. But if you want a scooped in shape, this is what you have to do. You have to kind of build the inside of your object and look at the outside. So think of it as a cross section of whatever it is you're trying to create. Now what I'm going to do is I'll turn my ruler off. I'm going to go back to Effect, 3D, but this time we're going to choose Revolve. Now what's going to happen is, imagine taking this shape and spinning it around a lathe, and we're going to get the wood or whatever we're spinning to turn into this shape. I'll hit Preview and you'll see what I'm talking about. Voila, you now have yourself a vase. So how does that work? Well, Illustrator looks at this shape and it spins it completely around and duplicates it until it has a shape like this. And the reason I brought this point in was because I knew that I wanted this to have an inside dip like this. I'll go ahead and cancel it, and I'll go ahead and grab these points and I'll move it up like so. I'll go back to that effect again, preview it, and we'll have a completely different result. We now have something that's sticking straight up. So this is very handy when you're trying to create something like an engine. You can create chess pieces like this. You can create cups, coffee mugs, or anything that you can think of as far as a cross section. It can be a little tricky at first trying to figure out what it is you're trying to create and the shape you need, but with a little practice you'll get the grasp of it. I'm going to extend this out a little bit and get a nice big fat vase that looks completely different from the one we just created. So once again, I'll select everything and I'll choose to, let me go back to revolve. I'll preview and we have a thicker vase here. Don't forget, you can always change the position of your object by clicking on this little box and hit OK, and your shape will resolve itself. And that is how you can use the 3D tools in Illustrator to create some very interesting 3D objects.